And speaking of the world, a new low this week, not just for Australia, but we are there too. Let's go around the globe, shall we? There's plenty there. And no, not the individuals in it, by the way. Most people, I believe, are inherently good. But those tasked with the honour and responsibility of representing us, well, that's an entirely different story. Take a bow, ICC, International Criminal Court. You've managed to achieve a feat I'd previously thought to be impossible. You've usurped the United Nations when it comes to enabling evil and rewarding terror. Managing, yes, to actually be even worse, and that is, well, pretty incredible. Issuing arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant on, yes, wait for it, suspicion of crimes against humanity and war crimes committed in Gaza. They include the use of starvation as a weapon and directing attacks against civilians. So let me do this briefly because it does become exhausting. Israel is sending in hundreds of aid trucks into Gaza every single week. To the very place, by the way, where their own people are still being held hostage in tunnels and others killed. Hamas, that band of merry men, continue to hijack them under the watchful eye of the UN. I came across this article by mistake this morning. Hamas-led force targets gangs looting Gaza aid convoys. Again, you couldn't make this stuff up. According to Reuters, Hamas has formed an armed force to prevent gangs targeting aid trucks. Are you serious? Yes, I am. The article goes on. Hamas's efforts to take a lead in securing aid supplies point to the difficulties Israel will face in a post-war Gaza. It goes on. Israel accuses Hamas of hijacking aid. The group denies that. This isn't even fiction. It is downright dangerous. A news agency reporting that the noble Hamas terrorists are trying to protect their people and stop the apparent armed gangs from stealing food. Hamas built tunnels for only themselves, not their women and children. They put weapons in hospitals and schools. They tortured their own people regularly, and they are currently holding babies hostage in tunnels. And you are taking their word for it? That they are not the perpetrators, but they are leading the charge to stop those evil gangs with guns stealing food? Again, come on. Secondly, the ICC says direct attacks against civilians. Again, I'll be brief, it gets exhausting. A, terrorists embed themselves in civilian homes and infrastructure. B, they keep hostages there too. C, they launch weapons from there as well. And D, even with all of the above, independent experts still say they lead the way in minimising civilian casualties. But hey, as always, credit where it's due. The ICC did throw in an arrest warrant for a Hamas terrorist already believed to be dead. Really strong stuff there, team. But really, they only threw him in to show equivalence between the leaders of a democratic nation and a terrorist group. Again, just on that, their credibility should be non-existent. Do you know that the ICC prosecutors met with the Turkish president in New York in September in a closed-door meeting? This off the back of Turkey's fierce advocacy toward the body to hold Netanyahu to account. Erdogan is getting a seat at the ICC table. The bloke who says Hamas is not a terrorist group, but liberators, who defends and supports staunchly warlord Vladimir Putin. How many Kurds have been killed and displaced under your reign, President? Oh, and how could I forget? Even the BBC is reporting. Turkish strikes in Syria cut water to 1 million people. They do, of course, follow it up with, in what experts say may be a violation of international law. May, of course. But no, ICC, you should be taking your advice on Israel from them. If the Turkish president is their idea of a good, upstanding leader, then Netanyahu should wear this farcical arrest warrant as a badge of honour. In Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said they would arrest the Israeli PM, given their staunch commitment to stand up for international law. He could be, and I don't say this lightly, the weakest leader in history. Who knows? It's a real tight race to the bottom. There is so much I could say here, but let me just leave it at this. Canadian University's new professor is convicted Islamist synagogue bomber who killed 4. Yep, your country's moral compass is outstanding. And how's this for peak hypocrisy? The Biden administration mustered up the energy to barely condemn the warrants.
We remain deeply concerned by the prosecutor's rush to seek arrest warrants and the troubling process errors that led to this decision. In coordination with partners, including Israel, we are discussing certainly those next steps, what that's going to look like. And to your question about sanctions, that's basically kind of just answered it in that last part of what I said. We're in consultation with our partners.
The Commander-in-Chief released his own statement afterwards, saying, "We will always stand with Israel against threats to its security." Really? With all due respect, sir, you have the memory of a goldfish, clearly. Since October 7, the US president has blamed Netanyahu for hostage deaths, demanded Israel not go into Rafah and rescue their own people, has threatened and has withheld weapons, and his VP agreed that a genocide was occurring in Gaza. No wonder the ICC is so emboldened. Now, let me be clear, and I hate that Kamala has now hijacked that phrase, but I must use it here because it matters. Every single leader during any war must be held to account, Netanyahu included. And he will have to answer for every decision he's made, just like everyone else. But not to these frauds. Speaking of frauds, back to the UN. Their latest ceasefire proposal that, again, does not include the release of the hostages. How can that not be the #1 priority? It beggars belief. They are meant to stand for human rights.
We made clear throughout negotiations we could not support an unconditional ceasefire that failed to release the hostages. Because, as this Council has previously called for, a durable end to the war must come with the release of the hostages. These two urgent goals are inextricably linked. This resolution abandoned that necessity.
But really, we all know the United Nations is now completely irrelevant. It itself has become the institutional version of a useful idiot. Look no further than this. Qatar leading the way in counter-terrorism for them. What a joke. The sooner the world rids itself of these fake human rights bodies and replaces them with real ones, the better.